And even with all the slogans on the wall and all the policies and all the procedures, they mean nothing without action. Culture is action. Leadership is action, not slogans. And the people know. The people feel it. Welcome to Totally Unacceptable. This is the show where we shine the light on the behaviors in the workplace that should never be tolerated, and the ones within ourselves that we shouldn't accept either. I'm Ed Clementi, and I spent 2 decades at Morgan Stanley rising through the ranks from executive assistant to managing director, seeing the best and the worst of leadership up close. And here's what I learned. Leadership is the greatest opportunity we will all have to make an impact. But that impact can be for better or for worse. And this show, it's about making sure it's for the better. So let's get into it. Today's topic could be one of the most important topics I've targeted specifically with respect to leadership. I've talked about many aspects of leadership, the good, the bad, but today we're going to target a type of leadership that I feel is the most damaging in the workplace. One of my latest Firestarter articles specifically tackles this topic. I've written a number of posts about this topic on LinkedIn. So check those out if you haven't already. But I continue to say, and I will continue to say, that if there are culture problems in an organization, it all starts and ends with leadership at the top. At the very top, because the leader sets the tone at the top of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And if you tolerate certain behaviors, if you reward certain behaviors, well, guess what? That is what you are going to get more of. But the worst of the worst leaders you're going to come upon in the workplace are those who have made the choice that because of their position of power, because of their authority, they will lead through fear. They will bully. Today's topic is workplace bullying. We're going to put the microscope on workplace bullying, perhaps the most unacceptable of all the types of leadership approaches. And it doesn't get enough attention. You know, we think bullying mostly is a problem for children on the playground. And yeah, that's a problem. But when you're growing up and you're a kid and you're on the playground and you know you might face a bully or a situation where you're going to get bullied, you're taught that if a situation like this arises, at least the way I was taught, is that you have to stand up for yourself. You have to push back. You have to fight back. Otherwise, the bullying will continue. Bullies typically don't want to be engaging with someone who's willing to push back, who's willing to fight back. So when they try it with someone who's willing to stand up for themselves, who's willing to push back, who's willing to fight back, they typically back off and go to the next person who is not willing to do that. But bullying doesn't end on the playground. It actually exists in adulthood when we get into the workplace. Let's get clear on what workplace bullying looks like. Many times we can feel like we're getting bullied. We can feel like that's the situation, but we're not sure, or colleagues say that's not really what's happening. So let me paint the picture for you. You have a manager that belittles you or mocks you openly in meetings. You get public reprimands that are disguised as feedback, withholding of opportunities or information, micromanagement as a way to control, disproportionate blame for small mistakes, favoritism towards others, emotional manipulation that comes in the form of guilt trips or passive-aggressive comments, or undermining in front of your peers. All these examples are examples of workplace bullying. So let's talk about the paradox I mentioned earlier. When you're growing up, you're taught stand up for yourself. And that usually works on the playground. But in the workplace, if you stand up for yourself against someone who is in a position of power, someone who is your boss, someone who has control over your career path for the moment, what does standing up for yourself usually result in when you're working for people like this, or when you're in an environment or culture like this? Well, here are some of the labels you might get if you decide to stand up for yourself when faced with bullying managers, bullying leaders. She's difficult. He's not a team player, really hard to manage, overly sensitive. You're rocking the boat. Too much drama, just uncoachable. And then these labels, they follow you. They follow you into your performance reviews, promotion opportunities, and closed-door conversations, the rooms that you're not in. These labels follow you, all because you decided to stand up for yourself. And that comes with real damage, real consequences. Number one, your confidence starts to erode. No matter how confident you think you are, when this happens for any meaningful period of time, it's like a constant beatdown, and you start to question yourself. In fact, others around you may start to aid in that questioning of yourself. So your confidence erodes. You begin to hesitate to speak up for fear of being mocked openly in a room, or criticized, or being labeled as difficult. This creates chronic stress. I mean, we're talking about your career here. You're talking about the way in which you have decided to provide for you and your family. And you can feel it every day not going well. So this creates stress, chronic stress, anxiety, sleepless nights, and that affects your health. It results in career derailment. You're stuck underneath the umbrella of this leader that is a bully, this leader that clearly doesn't like you. For whatever reason, you're not in the crew, you're not in the clique, you've decided to push back, you've decided to challenge something, and yet you're stuck under this umbrella for the time being. Even if it was a role you enjoyed, a role you liked, a role that you went to school to get, and now you're stuck thinking, can I even stay here? Because I'm stuck under the umbrella of a leader who has chosen to lead through fear, who has chosen to bully. And if I stay and try to weather the storm, try to get in good with this person, which by the way, rarely works, and I don't get in good, it's going to mean that I'm likely going to be passed over for opportunities, for promotions. And I might even get pushed out eventually. And then I have wasted all this time trying. And you end up finding yourself in a position where you've left a job you loved, you left a job you went to school to get, just to get relief from the bullying, relief from the anxiety, the stress, the sleepless nights. And you may even find yourself needing to take a step back, to take a salary hit, to start over. And this has broader effects if you happen to be someone who has your own team. They can see if you're making headway. They can see if you're respected. They can see if your ideas get traction. They can see and hear if you're being left out of the room. They can see if you're able to get results. If you're not able to get promoted, if you're not able to get opportunities, how can they get promoted? Can they get opportunities? And it's understandable. Again, everybody needs to take care of themselves and their own family. So the bullying behavior of that leader that you have has now not just impacted your career, but it's starting to impact other careers, and it's starting to impact your ability to lead effectively yourself. So you can see the ripple effects here. And when I talk about cultures and how one leader, or one, I should say, person in a leadership position that chooses to act in this way, chooses to behave in this way, chooses to bully, chooses to lead with fear, can have a massive ripple effect throughout the organization. And if this is allowed with one person, you can only imagine that it is allowed with other leaders, because leadership at the top has decided they would allow it. And that's where a toxic culture starts to manifest. And this behavior goes home with people. Every single one of you listening today has had to have the experience where you go to work one day and you have a wonderful experience. You get clear appreciation. Maybe you got a promotion. Maybe you got a raise. Maybe you got that all-important pat on the back after working hard for many months. And you walk home with an extra hop in your step. You get home, you hug and kiss your spouse. You say hi to the kids. Maybe you say, hey, let's go have a catch. You just energize. You get to the dinner table. You're all ears with what their day was like. You're listening. And then you're really happy to share what happened during your day. But the opposite is also something many or all of us has experienced. You go to work and you experience this bullying type of behavior. You got ridiculed in front of your peers, laughed at, left out of an important meeting. You heard a label that you've now been given. He's difficult. When you go home, your walk is slower. You're in your head. So your wife says hi, shares a part of her day, and you're not really listening. You're sitting at the dinner table and you're not there when the kids are starting to share how their day was. Or maybe something good that happened in their day or something bad that happened in their day and they're trying to share and you're not all the way there. You're distant. They can feel it. This is why I decided to write the book Leadership at the Dinner Table, because leadership goes way beyond the office walls, and true leaders embrace the responsibility that goes beyond those office walls. If you haven't signed up for the wait list, I'll put the link in the description here. Please do so. I'm creating something special, a different leadership book. This is a book you're going to want to read. You're going to want to get. Written from someone who has experienced all the angles, from coming up within an organization being led to being the leader in an organization. So why does this kind of behavior thrive? It's really simple. Results talk. The unfortunate truth is bullies seem to get results. Why? Why do bullies get results? Because they lead through fear, and people do not want to lose their jobs. They do not want to lose their salaries. They do not want to go out there and try to find another job. So they accept this kind of fear-based leadership, and they make damn sure they don't miss deadlines. They make damn sure they don't question anything, and they make damn sure that whatever was asked for, they deliver, because they don't want to feel the wrath. And this works a lot of times. Look, there has to be some accountability. Strong leaders enforce accountability, but there's a way to do that. And the answer is not through bullying behavior. I'm all for accountability. If you know me, you know I'm all for accountability. That's the only way to make sure things are getting done the right way and that you're tolerating the right kind of behaviors. But it does not have to be done through fear-based leadership. But the unfortunate truth is that's what many leaders gravitate towards because it's the only way they know how. I have authority. I said so. Therefore, it must be done. Do it or you're gone. That's what they gravitate towards because they don't know how to truly lead. And they just lean on the fact that they are in a position of authority, which means they get to tell you what to do and how to do it. And if you do it, and if you do all those things, things will be good for you. And if you don't, things will not be good for you. And people bend to that. And it gets results for the short term. And that's the key. This kind of leadership is short-term leadership. Results today, tomorrow, next week, maybe the quarter. But it creates inevitable fractures. But it gets results. And leadership at the top makes a conscious decision to allow it, to promote the bully leader because the results are there, to promote the bully leader because they're managing for the short term, not the long term, because they themselves are just living to make it another day. And they want to make sure they can show their leadership, whether it be a CEO, or whether it be the board, or whether it be shareholders, they want to show results. Now, not a year from now, not 2 years from now, not 5 years from now. I want to show now so that I can keep my position, so that I can keep making my pay, versus being confident and courageous enough to say, you might not see the results you want to see this quarter, but I'm building something for the long haul. I'm building a culture that will sustain itself for the long term, that will be resilient against downturns. I'm building something that people want to be part of. So the results might be slow and steady, but the long-term health of this organization will be better for it. People will be begging to be part of this. Now, leadership issues surface everywhere. Just 2 weeks ago, there was a story that unfolded on the Major League Baseball field. The Houston Astros were playing the New York Yankees. The Astros had their best pitcher going on the mound. The Yankees had the bases loaded. As I understand it, the catcher, who just so happens to be the backup catcher for the Houston Astros, wanted to make sure that the pitcher was going to pitch the best pitch for that situation. So he signaled to him to step off the mound so we could figure it out, get on the same page. The pitcher wanted none of it. So he just went and pitched his pitch. That pitch was hit out of the park for a grand slam, 4 runs on the board for the New York Yankees. You can imagine that this pitcher was upset, aggravated. But what happened after is what caused controversy. The pitcher, clearly frustrated, gets on the mound, and the catcher calls for a specific pitch. It seems as though he called for a curveball. For those of you not familiar with baseball, that would be a slower pitch coming in. And it's really important for catchers and pitchers to be on the same page because the speed at which these pitches come in, the catcher has to be properly ready to receive the pitch. He should know when a fastball is coming. So again, he calls for what seems to be a curveball or an off-speed pitch, a pitch that would come in slower. And instead, what came in was a 93-mile-an-hour pitch. It ends up hitting the catcher square in the ribs, missing his glove. Why? It was chalked up to a cross-up between the catcher and the pitcher, a miscommunication. But what struck me was what happened immediately after the catcher gets struck in the ribs with the 93-mile-an-hour pitch, is that there wasn't an immediate apology from the pitcher, running towards him saying, "I'm sorry, my bad," which is what one might expect. Instead, he turned around immediately and he looks like he's got, at least it appears to me, a face of anger, frustration, which caused many to believe that this was on purpose. Now, if in fact that is the case, that's a serious problem. If an organization was to allow that kind of behavior to occur, that would be setting the stage for toxic culture, allowing that kind of behavior, that kind of abusive behavior, just simply because you're angry at your teammate or you're angry at the situation that unfolded, you gave up a grand slam, that you put another teammate or another coworker, because that is their work environment, in harm's way. That should never be tolerated. Now again, we'll never know. The only two people that know what actually happened is that pitcher and that catcher. But let's look at the circumstances. That backup catcher, and if you watch him, if you look at him after it happens, it looks as if he's confused. It looks as if he's a little bit upset. Even the batter for the Yankees stares at the pitcher like, "What did you just do?" And again, no apology, no remorse from the pitcher. But the backup catcher didn't come out and speak against his pitcher. Now, could it be because he's the backup catcher and he doesn't want to create waves against someone who is the best pitcher on the team? Could it be that there's no consequences because he's the best pitcher on the team? Well, I would hope not. If it were me and I owned the team, I was in a leadership position of the team, the manager, the president of operations, or the owner, I would certainly be having some serious conversations to try to get to the bottom of it. And depending on how the answers were, depending on what I felt was true or not true, I wouldn't hesitate to cut the guy, because nothing is worth sacrificing the culture of my organization. Nothing. Nothing, no matter how good you are. That's playing for the short term, not the long term. That's showing people what you'd accept versus what you wouldn't accept. Nothing would stop me. That's setting the wrong tone. Nothing would stop me from cutting a guy that I thought intentionally put another player in harm's way. Now, it turns out that this pitcher is at the end of his contract. He will become a free agent at the end of the year, which means available to any team, which means, given that he's a talented player, he could command a lot of money. One team has already come out and said they're not interested based on what they saw. Kudos to that team, because they have a feeling, they have an opinion that that was on purpose and they want no part of that. And that is setting the tone. That is leadership. So, what to do if you are living in a situation where your manager, the person leading you, is a bully, is demonstrating all or some of the bullying behaviors we discussed? Well, the first thing you have to do is recognize it and not explain it away. Don't excuse it. Document the patterns so you can see clear as day, yes, this is happening, this is happening. Make sure you protect your health. You understand the situation you're in, you document the patterns, and safeguard your health, reminding yourself of your value, reminding yourself of what you bring to the table, reminding yourself that you don't have to be stuck in this situation, that there is a better space for you. as long as you understand your value and what you bring to the table. Try hard, even though it's damn near impossible, not to bring that negative energy home to the dinner table. Safeguard that space as much as possible. And when you're sure that this is in fact what you are dealing with, you're dealing with a bullying manager who is holding you back, hurting your career, impacting your health, making it hard not to bring that negative energy home, and you feel that it's very unlikely to change or very unlikely that you're going to be able to navigate to another area of the institution and get away from this, it's time to make a decision that maybe you need to find a better space for yourself. And that is not quitting, that is not giving up, that is choosing you. And if you are leading this kind of toxic culture, sit back and think about the impacts. If you don't care about the impacts inside the office walls, please think about the impacts outside and beyond the office walls. Stop excusing abuse in favor of performance. Every bully poisons 10 others. It has a ripple effect. And even with all the slogans on the wall and all the policies and all the procedures, they mean nothing without action. Culture is action. Leadership is action, not slogans. And the people know. The people feel it. And for those of you that embrace leading through fear, the bullies of the workplace, you're not leaders. You are cowards hiding behind authority. And for those of you at the top, the silent execs, you're complicit. It all starts and ends with what you tolerate, the tone you set. Cultures can change. Workplaces can heal. Leaders can choose courage over fear. It's unfortunate, but the playground really never went away. It just got promoted. And the cost of ignoring it is far too high. Once again, leadership is the greatest opportunity we will all have to make a meaningful impact. But that impact can be for better or for worse. Choose wisely, because that impact goes beyond the office walls. If this hit you, good. Now do something about it, because knowing that's not enough. Acting is where everything changes. So take the insight, the fire, the frustration, whatever sparked something today, and move, speak, decide, build. Your future is not waiting for permission, and neither should you. I'm Clementi. This is totally unacceptable, and we are just getting started.